The rain had just begun to fall over the dusty roads of a small rural town when a black luxury car sped through the narrow street toward the only medical building for miles, a modest rural clinic with flickering lights and peeling paint. Inside, Nurse Elena was finishing her late evening shift. She was the only nurse on duty that night, quietly organizing medicine bottles and patient records while the old ceiling fan hummed above her. Life in this little town was simple, slow, and often difficult, but Elena had never complained. She believed helping people was more valuable than comfort or wealth. Suddenly, the clinic doors burst open. Two anxious men rushed in carrying a sharply dressed young man in an expensive suit who had collapsed outside the building. His face was pale, his breathing uneven. The men looked panicked, but Elena didn't waste a second asking questions. "Lay him down on the stretcher," she said firmly. She checked his pulse, quickly attached oxygen, and began emergency treatment. Outside the clinic, 3 black SUVs pulled up, and several men in dark suits stepped out, clearly bodyguards. But Elena had no idea who the man was. To her, he was simply another patient who needed help. The unconscious man was Adrian Cole, one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the country. His technology company had recently made headlines after signing a billion-dollar deal. Newspapers constantly followed his every move. Yet here, in this quiet forgotten town, no one recognized him. Earlier that evening, Adrian had been driving through the countryside to clear his mind after months of stress, endless meetings, and sleepless nights. His life had become a constant race for success, money, and power. But suddenly, his chest tightened, his vision blurred, and before he could react, he collapsed near the small clinic. If Elena hadn't been there, he might not have survived. As she worked to stabilize him, Adrian slowly regained consciousness. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was Elena's calm, determined face leaning over him. Her soft voice cut through the confusion in his mind. "You're safe now. Just breathe slowly," she said gently. Adrian blinked, trying to focus. For a moment, the world seemed quiet. The stress, the noise, the chaos of his wealthy life felt distant. All he saw was the nurse who had just saved him. Minutes later, Adrian's security team rushed inside the clinic, their expressions tense and protective. One of them whispered urgently to Elena, explaining who Adrian was and demanding immediate arrangements to move him to a private hospital in the city. But Elena remained calm. "He's not going anywhere until I'm sure he's stable," she replied firmly. The bodyguards were surprised. Most people immediately changed their attitude once they discovered Adrian's wealth and status. But Elena treated him no differently than any other patient. Adrian watched quietly from the bed, fascinated by her confidence and sincerity. For the first time in years, someone wasn't trying to impress him, flatter him, or gain something from him. To Elena, he wasn't a millionaire. He was simply a man who needed care. Over the next few hours, Adrian remained in the clinic while Elena monitored his condition. The storm outside grew heavier, trapping everyone there overnight. During the quiet moments between treatments, they talked. Adrian learned that Elena had moved to this small town years ago after losing her parents in an accident. Instead of chasing a high-paying hospital career in the city, she chose to serve communities that desperately needed medical help. She worked long hours for a modest salary but never regretted it. Adrian listened with deep admiration. In his world, people often measured success by money, power, and fame. But Elena measured life by compassion and purpose. The contrast fascinated him. He began to realize that the peace he felt in this tiny clinic was something he had been searching for his entire life. By morning, Adrian had recovered enough to sit up and walk. His security team insisted they leave immediately. But before he stepped into the waiting SUV, Adrian turned back toward the clinic door. Elena stood inside, organizing supplies like nothing unusual had happened. He walked toward her slowly. "Thank you for saving my life," he said sincerely. Elena smiled politely. "That's my job." Adrian hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you ever visit the city?" Elena laughed softly. "Not really. My patients need me here." Adrian nodded, but something inside him had already changed. For the first time in years, he felt drawn to something beyond business deals and corporate victories. Weeks passed, but Adrian couldn't forget the quiet strength of the nurse who treated him like an ordinary person. He began visiting the town more often, sometimes pretending he was simply passing through. Each time, he stopped by the clinic with small donations of medicine and equipment. Elena appreciated the help but remained the same humble, grounded woman he had first met. Slowly, their conversations grew longer. They talked about life, dreams, struggles, and the meaning of happiness. Adrian realized that Elena's kindness had filled a space in his heart that money never could. And Elena began to see the men behind the headlines, a man who was lonely despite his success. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet fields surrounding the clinic, Adrian finally confessed something he had been holding inside for weeks. "When I collapsed here that night, I thought it was the worst moment of my life," he said. "But now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Elena looked at him curiously. Adrian smiled softly. "Because it led me to you." Elena's heart skipped. She had always tried to keep professional distance, but Adrian's sincerity was impossible to ignore. In that quiet rural clinic, surrounded by simplicity and honesty, something unexpected had grown between them. And sometimes, life has a strange way of bringing two completely different worlds together at exactly the right moment. A millionaire searching for peace. A nurse devoted to helping others. Their paths crossed on a stormy night when fate decided that wealth and kindness would meet in the most unlikely place. If this story touched your heart and you want to hear more emotional and inspiring stories like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the next story might surprise you even more.